Another edition of Beat the Closing Number presented by TheLines.com. I'm Eli Hershkovich, joined as always by Justin Perri of Shot Quality. You can follow Justin at JustinPerri8 on X. I'm at Eli Hershkovich. Justin, we have a loaded college basketball slate on Saturday, and we did pretty well for our early week action. I will say Bonnie's completely demolished the competition earlier in the week.
I mean, I knew I wasn't going to get far without hearing about it, but the first 35 seconds, Eli, gosh. All right, I'll have to get you back in this episode. No problems at all. Yeah. Look, I think I'll probably still be on Dayton this weekend. Everything continues to just point towards them being unlucky. That was a bad result. It's looking bad, but I still think they could turn it on. Still not even, when you're watching it at home, it's February, but January 31st here. So got a full month and a half to go.
Absolutely. Mark Schmidt, really good in those spots, but I agree. Dayton definitely has some upside, especially come the A10 tournament, maybe even this weekend. If you're consuming this before Friday's matchup against St. Louis, be sure to follow Justin on X to get his bets for that matchup. So, Justin, let's get into the Saturday card. A lot to dive into, some great games, including Duke, UNC. You won't want to miss that handicap. But tipping it off with another ACC matchup, we have Pitt, about a 1-point favorite. Keep in mind, these are projections from KenPom. The lines are not out yet as we record here on Friday morning. But Pitt favored by 1 per KenPom at Wake Forest. Noon Eastern time tip. I'll be on the Demon Deeks. I'm hoping for a pick-em, maybe -1. But if you go back to the ACC tournament last year, Hunter Sallis and co. lost to Pitt, so a little bit of revenge in mind. They split the regular season series, but Wake losing to Pitt in the first or second round of the ACC tournament. And Wake also needs this game for its at-large resume. You go back to the last couple games, losing at Louisville, a bet I know you had on the cards, and then against Duke, covering the number last weekend, but not winning the game outright. So they need this one and a bounce-back spot for that matter. Key for Wake's offense, a couple different things. But A, non-conference, they struggled against high-major competition because Hildreth and Sallis weren't shooting well at all from three. But Sallis, over his last 5 games, shooting 38% from deep. Pitt also has poor ball screen defense, and that should play into Sallis, whether he's handling the ball, shooting the ball off of a ball screen action, pick and pop, whatever it may be, or attacking the basket. And also Pitt grades in the 16th percentile per synergy on its post-up defense on a points per possession basis. That should pay dividends for Spillers and Efton Reed. Keep in mind, Sallis and Reed both came over from Gonzaga a couple years ago. So both of those guys have experience in big games. I expect them to come through in this spot. What say you, Justin?
Yeah, I definitely am on your side with this one. I lean towards Wake. Been against Pittsburgh recently. Didn't get the win with the UNC bet on the 28th. That didn't go very well. I was against Pitt there, but that was UNC kind of crumbling a little late.
What did Shot Quality have that one at?
Pittsburgh win by 7.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. Then the Cuse game, I did fade them successfully, and I think, we're a little lower on them than most. I think it comes from a bit of expected regression in terms of their finishing at the rim rates allowed on defense. In conference, teams are shooting just 52% against them, expect to be shooting 58% against them, and that's a pretty big deal. I think we're at that point in the season, Eli, where you want to start really looking at how teams have played in the conference. I'm kind of, non-con's kind of in the rear view. The only really reason I use the rear view is to understand where everyone else is looking, right? Where everyone else is. Say, okay, well, this is the data everyone else has, and that's the data I'm maybe not looking at. So when I go take a look at that, the difference in that regression, a 3% expected, regression in non-con and full season, but that's mostly driven by what's going on in the conference. So it's been recent. They've been getting a little lucky. I think you can, if you like that lead towards Wake, I like it from their side as well. I expected to be doing better from the mid-range, but they're starting to shoot better from 3. They were, expected to be doing 3% better for the season, but in the conference, no, exactly on point. So they are doing a little bit better. The shooting's kind of going as expected now. I think it's probably a pretty good buy spot here with this Pittsburgh team maybe a little overvalued. And again, this is a home game. Still, they are efficient attacking the rim. They force turnovers. They use the post a lot, which is effective at getting those open looks because they're going to need them. Wake's not exactly the best three-point shooting team, and they don't get to the rim enough. But if they force the issue a little bit, if they drive more, if they understand maybe Pitt has a bit of a weakness there, they probably can get some good looks and, use that efficiency even if the frequency is low.
I wanted to get your take on something kind of broad level here. I mentioned this a lot in my handicaps and my write-ups over at thelines.com, situational spots. And I know shot quality and regression models maybe don't play toward that. I want to give you credit here. We went oppo on Alabama, Mississippi State earlier in the week. I had the Rebels, or the Bulldogs, I should say, at home. You had the Crimson Tide. Granted, Mississippi State blowing a layup at the rim for the lead, but Alabama probably still would have covered the closing line of 1.5 because Alabama was a 1.5-point dog on the closing number. Do you take into account situational spots? Because this is a great home spot for Wake Forest where they're probably going to play above expectation, or does that not really matter to you in terms of your handicap?
It matters because it changes the line. That's why it matters. I don't think I take it into – it doesn't impact my handicap on its own. There might be other factors that lead to a proper accounting of something similar. So a team underperforms on the road before a big game. The average person might call that a look ahead spot where they sort of aren't really exactly – they don't care about the road game. They're trying to get up for the next game, and that makes the next game the get up spot. Shot quality data might end up seeing that, first road loss as a win, and then you could get a undervalued signal going into that home game where maybe the drastic reaction or the recency bias leads to you being down on a team that was just in a look ahead spot. A lot of times the market catches on though. So you're not outsmarting anybody with any of that, right? All those narratives are cooked in. Ken Pom and all these guys who set the lines, they all understand this stuff.
5 years ago, though, we weren't. The market wasn't nearly as efficient as it is in these spots. I agree with you though.
One of the most dramatic shifting markets in sports betting in the last 5 years of college basketball. In terms of ways it has gone to the fact that you might even now be full circle able to get like an edge using Ken Pom again. Like, it used to be Ken Pom was the edge, the spots were the edge, those kind of got bought out. Now expected analytics is the edge, and you can start seeing that not be as sharp as it used to. And new things are coming in terms of how matchups will always be the thing that I think work, right? If you can understand strategy, if you can, predict who's going to struggle, what shot types are going to struggle, who's going to be able to get good looks because of what their players, enable them to do on the court, that isn't really going to have the same wins that you will with like the models. But yeah, I don't really take those into account. I notice them a lot because the efficiency models and the expected data models will be all far off. Like the market will have its own like spot tax that won't be identifiable or able to be rationale in any other way. So it's very glaring when you pay attention to all 5,500 games per year. But yeah, I don't really necessarily account for it. If anything, if it's in my favor and like I'll like it even more, I'll be like, thank you for giving me a bonus. And if it's against me and ruining my edge, I end up skipping the play.
Makes a lot of sense. Justin and I come from handicapping the way we go about it differently, but I think that's what makes this show great because we have different angles. But generally speaking, we do align, and this is an example of that with Wake and Pitt. On to the next game, another situational spot for me. Auburn projected to be about a 6-point road favorite at Ole Miss. Tip time on ESPN, I believe, 2 p.m. Eastern on Saturday here, continuing along with the Saturday college basketball slate. Auburn riding a 12-game winning streak coming into this game. Ole Miss snapping a 3-game skid, but failing to cover the number against Texas. A lot of sharp bettors I know were on the Rebels on Wednesday night, but they did win outright if you had Chris Beard's team in a money line parlay. And Auburn survived against Tennessee last weekend and demolished LSU with Janai Broome back in the starting lineup earlier in the week. So not only are you going to get a sold-out pavilion here, Justin, for Ole Miss, but speaking of situational spots, Bruce Pearl mentioned this in his press conference, and I think it's important to note. Auburn had a late tip against LSU on Wednesday night on the road. Right. Then they come home and then back on the road on Saturday. That rarely happens in SEC play. So situationally, not just a get-up game for Ole Miss, trying to win back-to-back games. They've also lost 6 straight to Auburn. Granted, 2 of those have only happened with Chris Beard, but all 6 happened with Brakefield and Matthew Morrell on this team, so they're well aware of that losing streak. But also Auburn potentially maybe some tired legs throughout this one just based on the situational spot. So I have more to dive into in this handicap, but what does shot quality have to say about this matchup?
Tough one. You got to hope that crowd really kind of helps out for Ole Miss, because Auburn is going to do exactly what you need to do when you play Ole Miss, and that's take care of the basketball. Turnover percent 13. I mean, that's 6th best in the nation. And again, yeah, it might be a tough spot, but the 87-74 win over LSU expected to be a 107-74 win. So let that sink in. No, it's I think I lean Auburn. Honestly, I'm not going to listen to the media. I'm not going to listen to Bruce Pearl lament about travel. He has one of the best teams that we've seen in the last 10 years in college basketball, with one of the best players that we have seen in the last 10 years in college basketball. Low turnover rate, great attacking the basket, creates incredible spacing, really good rebounding, and then don't allow you to take threes. So that combination means that, they're forcing you into looks that Broome can alter and affect more. And it leads to them having a top 35 expected defense, the number 2 expected offense, and it makes for a very formidable matchup, to the point that, even, you talked a little bit about some of the limitations of shot quality, and we're very open about this. Height, the tallest players give us the most trouble. So, hi, John Broome. So you see a big 23% luck rating next to Auburn, and that's going to be very natural when you only have 1 loss. But the fact of the matter is that you probably need to give them a little bit more of an edge case error scenario. This is not a middle of the pack team that is going to model out and fit to the data like everybody else. This is one of those teams that is equally hard to have fit, just as much as MVSU is an NJITR. Auburn at the very top, might be better than anyone can really expect. So it's an interesting conundrum, and I do technically think that even with that, not accounting for that, it still leans Auburn. If you account for that, even more lean towards Auburn.
Okay. No, fair points there. My issue with Auburn in this matchup, and why I respect Beard's defense here, Ole Miss's no middle defense, I think, sets up really well against what Auburn wants to do in terms of getting the ball into the lane and post-up touches for Broome, Cardwell, maybe even Baker Mazar on a back down, because they only rank in the 13th percentile on post-up touches allowed, which means they don't allow many of them because they don't allow the ball.
16th most in the conference. Yeah, none. Sorry, wrong page. Sorry, I went to Wake Forest, who also, interestingly, doesn't allow a lot. But let's stay in the right conference. My apologies, everybody. For Mississippi, even crazier. So 13th most, only 2% of possessions against them in conference play have been in the post. That's crazy.
Yeah, great backup there for synergy and shot quality. And they rank in the 65th percentile on a points per possession basis on defending post-up touches. Again, you're trapping the middle. You're not allowing Johni Broome to get single coverage on a back down. You're making him kick it out. Granted, as you hit on, Auburn can space you out at a high level, but Ole Miss's defense is affected because of their ball pressure. And I know you mentioned Auburn doesn't turn the ball over, but I will say their primary ball handlers, Pettiford and Denver Jones, both above 16% turnover rate. It's not elite for a true ball handler. So overall as a team, Auburn doesn't turn the ball over, but both of those guys can be a little bit loose with the ball at times, especially Pettiford as a true freshman. And
if it's loud and it's a big environment, I mean, that's the X factor, right?
Yep.
To me, if those turnovers come from the
live ball,
pound passes, live bound turnovers. That's where Mississippi could. Oh, sorry, yeah, where Mississippi could shock some people. Honestly, win the game. And again, every possession is going to count. It's going to be right there. This is a sharp line. My big issue is Auburn's very good, and honestly, the defense for Mississippi expected to regress, but they also have some good size in there, and the SEC is ferocious, so largely going to expect no bet from me, but I don't know, which way are you going, Eli? Have we said which side you're on?
Yeah, so I'll very well be on Ole Miss.
Okay.
Very, very likely going to be on Ole Miss if I get 2 possessions here with Ken Pom projecting this one at 6. To your point, Ole Miss's 3-point defense, 26.8% in league play, but after the Alabama win, it was at 20%. So we have seen some regression in league play. One last thing for me on the Rebels, why I like them here in this spot. Auburn plays drop coverage with Broome and or Cardwell at the 5. Ole Miss plays 5 out with Malik Dia and Brakefield. Maybe you get some shooting regression. They're 6th in the league in 3-point efficiency in SEC play at 34.2%. But like I hit on,
40% night and a couple extra turnovers, it's a good game, and maybe they win. Like that's both those things. They win the turnover battle by like 5-6, and then they shoot 42% from 3, and they embrace it a little bit because it's not like they shoot a fair amount of threes, right? More off the dribble, and they're a little bit better off the dribble, not by much. It's pretty equal, but they go up to if they look a little bit like Alabama, and they get to like a 45% 3-point attempt rate, and they hit 40% of them. I do think that is a recipe that can beat Auburn. It can beat a lot of teams, so you'd think, but it's really hard to beat Auburn. So yeah.
12-game winning streak says it all. Beard, a very analytically savvy coach, and Brakefield and D are going to have big nights at both ends, not only with their post-up defense on traps, but also from behind the arc. I will say it every podcast from this one going forward, or I guess the last couple, I am a major, major Malik Dia stan. So onward and upward, Justin. Those are my 2 favorite bets, Ole Miss and Wake Forest. I'm going to give the floor to you here. Kansas, a 1-point favorite in Waco at Baylor, 4 p.m. Eastern time tip on ESPN. We have great matchups here to discuss, not only with the 2 games we've already hit on, but the rest of the way. Rock Chalk, potentially favored. We'll see how the market shifts here. As you said, home teams generally get a little bit of tax. Maybe Baylor closes as a favorite. But how are you handicapping this big Big 12 matchup?
Let's go Bears. Is how I'm handicapping it. So Baylor's been bad by their standards, right? Just lost at BYU, have losses to Arizona on the road by 10, 11 points, lost at home to TCU, and that's all within the last 2.5 weeks. Not great. Did get a big road win against Arizona State. Every road win in the conference is important. Won that by 6. Cincinnati they beat. I was on them to do that. Cincinnati's kind of been a little bad. Lost at Iowa State. We saw they sort of got suffocated. It was, that's what happens when you go into Iowa State. But I think this is a really big buy spot. You still got Coach Drew's one of the best. All the numbers look incredible. The offense-defense combo is the only one in shot quality that's both top 10 in the nation. They are just not getting very lucky at all. Their entire offense, all the regression arrows pointing up. They're shooting 51% at the rim in Big 12 play, expect to be shooting 56%. Shooting 34% from 3, expect to be shooting 38%. Shooting 32% from the mid-range. 32%. That is so atrocious. They are expect to be shooting 42%. Look, Omier, VJ Edgecombe, defensive foundation that when this team starts to play well and isn't missing all their shots and creating bad game scripts for themselves, I think you're gonna be like, where has this Baylor team been all year? And it's because they're not really engineered to lose. They're engineered to win. They're engineered to look good. They're engineered to go to the top. And I still think you can buy in pretty low on them. They have the same diagnostics that, made me start chirping about Louisville before I think anyone else was. I got plenty of 120-1. You can find this 80, 70 now. I think Baylor's similar. They're going to wake up a bit. They're not really in all that much concern for missing the tournament, but this is a big, big potential for a home win to put them back on the map. You beat Kansas. And again, Kansas a little bit lucky. That loss against Houston was big, expected to win, but they've had plenty of expected losses down the line there. A couple early ones in the season. They beat Duke. They beat TCU. Interesting team for Kansas. I think, the rim attack is as dangerous as it gets, but the fact is that I think this defense that Scott Drew has is going to muck up the works. They don't get to the free throw line enough. They play bad defense against threes. And guess what? Baylor can shoot. This is the perfect buy low spot. Will likely be one of my biggest plays of the weekend.
Love it. A couple notes from me, and I do lean Baylor for sure, but I want to ask you as a follow-up.
Please.
So, DeJuan Harris did practice. They actually didn't officially state it yesterday. So he didn't play against UCF earlier in the week, and Self was hoping he practiced yesterday. Nothing official whether he did or did not. KJ Adams, Self said, likely limited in practice yesterday after being sore following the UCF win, which they arguably should have gone to overtime against. And then for Baylor, Langston Love still with ankle soreness, and Roach didn't play in that loss to BYU in concussion protocol. Do any of those potential injuries modify or maybe make you a little more hesitant, make you want to wait on the injury status? How do you go about it with all those injury notes?
Yeah, I need to see that Roach is playing, I think is the big one. I definitely want him in there. And I think, coming back from, honestly, concussion protocol and going to Provo's got to be a 1-2 punch that not enough people talk about. Oxygenated air in your brain, not getting enough of it. I don't know. Props for him to playing. He's a warrior. He's a tough kid. He'll be out there. I think he'll play a lot better in this game, honestly. And I had BYU. I kind of expected maybe a tough result. It was expected to be a 1-point loss though, so maybe it was supposed to be a cover for BYU there. It was by the hook instead. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the BYU team. I think this is about as low as a buy-in as you'll get. The defense expected to be doing better too. The live turnover rate. So yeah, as long as they have the commander in chief and Roach to pair with, Edgecombe's prowess, I can't wait to see where he goes. He's going to be an NBA star, I think, in not much time. He has that type of skill, the length, the bounce, the shooting, the defense. I don't know why people don't like the NBA. It's just all the college players that were their best going and doing craziest stuff. I know you don't. But I think it's, if you really watch it, there's some good, fun teams there. Anyway, I digress. He's going to be great. There's a lot of talent on that Baylor team. They're just slept on. I think, you wait to see if Roach plays. If Harris sits, great for us. But, I expect a grinder. Maybe if you like, maybe a multi-game parlay, the under. If Baylor's going to win, it's going to be an under. So.
Same game parlay. Love it. You can find the best odds.
First time I mentioned those 3 words on this show, but yeah.
Over at thelines.com. Similar to Ole Miss Auburn, I would highly recommend, Scott Drew, if you're watching and listening to this podcast, which we know you always do every week, just kidding, that Baylor would be very well suited to go 5 out here with Omier more so at the 5, even though they're undersized, and Celestine at the 4, because Baylor would get a ton of open looks from deep against Dickinson in drop coverage.
It's going to be that's going to be another great game. And Saturday, these Saturdays are loaded. First Saturday of February, baby. We are so close.
Let's go. Can't wait to be doing those shows with you in March Madness, man. We've been doing it for a while. So let's keep it going here. ACC, one of the best rivalries, not only in college basketball, but in all of sports. UNC, a 13.5-point dog at Cameron Indoor against the Duke Blue Devils. Total of 149.5, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time tip on ESPN. We know who will be on the call. Friend of the show, Jay Billis. He'll be back on this podcast in March. Justin, I have some notes here for this one, but I'll tip it off with you. What say you per shot quality?
UNC, baby. Give
Whoa.
me the Tar Heels. I'm taking the points, 13.5. I don't know. There's a storied rivalry here. There's so much to dive into. There's so much to talk about. Cameron Indoor, of course, tough of a place to play as it gets. But guess what? This North Carolina team just continues to be underperforming. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I do think that their median performance is better, and I think you're buying in at a price that is lower than that median. And so that's what makes it a good bet to me. End of discussion. Don't really need to go much further. The defense has not looked all that great. I'm a little concerned, but the transition offense is still good. The rate at which they're getting into transition is still really good. They finish at the rim really well. They get to the rim a lot because of those transition opportunities. I mean, they are shooting the effective, again, 1.6 expected points per possession in transition, 80% from the floor essentially when they run, and they run at 12% of their possessions. So I'm not saying they're winning. I'm not saying take the money line. I will say this is a spot that I expect to be a good game. 10 points, 9 points, sure. 15, 14 feels a little big to me. It just does. The Duke defense expected to be allowing 1 point per possession in conference play. They are allowing not 0.9 points per possession. Teams just can't hit anything in the mid-range, can't hit anything at the rim, not hitting shots in the post. I just think North Carolina probably brings in a little bit of a better talent level than what we're seeing across most of the ACC right now. This is one of the worst years for the ACC we've seen. I mean, Duke playing against Wake Forest, Boston College, Miami, Florida, Notre Dame, Pittsburgh, SMU, Virginia Tech. Yeah, NC State, a decent game. They gave them a good little run there at home. It was an 8-point game. You don't think North Carolina can come in and give them something similar? I don't think the ACC is good, but don't let that confuse you with UNC not having talent and recruiting depth and still being a blue blood underneath. This is their game of the year. I think you take those points. You take them confidently. One of my favorite plays, especially after that melt. You know, the Pittsburgh failure to cover makes this all the more valuable. All the final score models are just going to see an 8-point loss. They had it. They had that in their grasp. They probably could have won. They definitely should have covered. They played like a team I want to continue to back. I don't ever get upset about a final minute melt. It is not predictive, especially when the data tells me they are what they looked like in the first 35 minutes, not the last 5. So let's ride Tar Heels. One of my favorites. Should be a fun one.
Yeah, I'm stoked to watch this one, even though the spread is big. I agree. Get up game. This is your Super Bowl. I know that's cliche, but it's true. It's true. It's a huge game for UNC. You know you're gonna get their best effort. I will say, injury-wise, Jalen Washington did not play against Pitt. Definitely one to monitor just because UNC lacks size and physical size at that, especially if he doesn't go. Now, for the Tar Heels, mid-range-wise, RJ Davis, I think you see regression for the Blue Devils mid-range, 2-point efficiency allowed defense, because Davis is great in that free throw line extended pull-up game. But you mentioned shooting, and it correlates to their against the spread lack of success. UNC shooting 32.1% from deep. RJ Davis' struggle is a big part of that, 30.3%, although we did see some positive regression from him against Pitt, which I mentioned in the handicap earlier in the week. But UNC just 7-14-1 against the spread, which is probably inflating this number. However, you mentioned this earlier in the show, so I want to get your take on it. Duke failed to cover against NC State, as you hit on. Maybe shot quality expected a closer game at half than it actually was, but that was a potential look-ahead spot for Duke.
Yeah,
so is that deflating this number a little bit to you? I know you like UNC, but you see where my head's at there?
Yeah, no, you're right. Expected to be a 27-point win for Duke versus NC State. Great call.
I think maybe your head is like, whoa, we got shot quality data.
Choking on it a little bit. No, it's a good one. Great call. Yeah, maybe they want to drive him into the ground. I don't know. Again, I think the line's probably a little bit overinflated, just the base level of the model's misunderstanding. the UNC team by a few points. I'll tell you right now, where we have them is sitting as a 123.99. What Ken Palm is going to get them as, I'll tell you in a second, North Carolina. Ken Palm's going to have them at 116.98. So the defense a little bit better, but the offense significantly worse. Again, the 123 offensive rating is a lot more akin to Duke. So if they do perform to what shot quality expects, this should be a pretty close game. I mean, it's going to be 11, 12 points, 9 points, but it's 13, 14 is definitely higher than what we would expect. I don't think we have projections up yet for the next day, so I can't tell you what our RAPM is spitting out there. But yeah, no, this is a spot where I expect likely should be 10.5 is probably what I make this. So if you can get that 13.5, I'll be playing it. Wouldn't really go much lower than 12.5.
Stay away from me, but I get your points. I'm just a little bit worried if Washington doesn't go and UNC.
If injuries, of course, a big part of the game. I a lot of respect for people who tell me I don't even bet a game until close because the injuries can be so bad, especially if you're betting bigger. I get it, or betting selectively. But, for my style, volume betting, I'm going to take those wins and losses with injuries, with closing line value, and I'm going to assume that they kind of just even out to either side, and I focus in on the other 60% of games where that doesn't happen, and I actually try to prove my edge in games that are just variability exercises.
Another injury that we haven't touched on, and I know it's on the smaller end for Duke, but Malik Brown with that knee injury, he's Duke's defensive stopper off the bench. He could be back for this game. So not that impacts the handicap or the number at all, but definitely worth noting for Duke long-term. Now, really quickly, before we get into Gonzaga St. Mary's, I know we got to hustle here, but Duke plus 450. I know Cooper Flagg is a monster favorite for the Wooden Award. I think Duke is overvalued to win the national title, which is why you've heard Justin and I like some long shots. Maryland, not to toot our own horn, but they are red hot after a cover against Wisconsin, playing their best basketball. Heck, Deshaun Harris-Smith is hitting threes and is Maryland's defensive stopper right now off the bench after struggling last season. I love the Terps long term. But you agree that Duke is overvalued to win the title?
Just talked about it in my new byline over at Hoops HQ. Played a played a new future on one of the other major contenders that isn't priced like that, but maybe should be. And also took a 140-1 long shot on the Final Four on a mid-major team. So kind of fun stuff. Yeah, gotta take your long shots. Gotta have some fun with it. Got some good respect in the market already, which is always nice to see. But yeah, I do think Duke's a little overvalued, especially the inexperience of Flagg. It's going to be interesting to see if I think that changes a lot. I got to see how they play in the ACC tournament. If they're giving everything and they want to raise that banner this year, any team that tries to raise a conference banner to me gets a peg down in March, because it's just, you don't have the energy reserves. You don't have the legs against the teams that bow out of the conference tournament in the first round, allow a loss to an 8 seed as a 3 seed, and just sit there and take the extra week. So we'll see. It depends where they're looking. I'm guessing they want the national championship. I wouldn't be shocked if that means that there's value on someone else in the ACC that isn't,
Wake?
Duke or Louisville. I think both Duke, Louisville, UNC are prime targets to bow out of the ACC tournament, allow it to sort of be this mid-level fodder. Someone like Wake, Pitt, Notre Dame raises it, and it's just a ho-hum because it's just not a good conference this year. So interesting strategy, a lot of interesting things that go into that. I don't think any of that is factored in. It is very much a raw who wins a tournament style draw. No one's handicapping or trying to fit coaching and program strategy in. So if you have a hunch and you want to bet on it, you definitely can win if you're right.
I actually think Wake Forest, not only the ACC tournament, but because of the market perception of the ACC overall, really quickly before we get to Gonzaga St. Mary's.
Making sure my cat's chilling. My bad.
Okay, no, you're good. You're good. Just wanted Wake Forest in the NCAA tournament, if they get in, I think is going to be undervalued enough where you could be looking at a team, a dark horse in a very poor conference that, again, the market is going to account for, maybe undervalued in March. Just saying is all I'm saying. Last game here, St. Mary's, which was dominant and then some earlier in the week, one of the best defensive stretches you will ever see. They completely shut down Santa Clara for a stretch in the quote-unquote...
very good. Santa Clara,
right.
Very good team. Top 100 team, for sure.
In the third quarter, per se, of a college basketball game, this is per KenPom, just how he breaks it up. So the first 10 minutes of the second half, St. Mary's did not allow a single point against Santa Clara.
They UConned them, right? It's a Hurley, a 30-0 run.
Yeah, 100% against Illinois in the Elite Eight. So big game for Gonzaga, though, for NCAA tournament purposes at St. Mary's. I would say right now Gonzaga needs a win to help its at-large resume. And KenPom projects this one, St. Mary's -1. Late night tip on ESPN. Consider it I don't even want to say it because I hate the chase game. But if you want to chase on a college basketball game, this is it. What say you, big one in the WCC?
Oh, yeah. Gonzaga goes in and gets a win. Chalk it up. Get it ready. Look, I understand that Santa Clara game was crazy. They are undefeated. This is a massive spot. We saw Gonzaga lose in overtime on the road to Oregon State, the newcomer. Santa Clara at home beats them, and then what the transitive property they lost at home to Santa Clara, and shouldn't they go? No, not how it works, because it's not one-to-one. The way that Santa Clara plays is not the way that St. Mary's plays, is not the way that Gonzaga plays, is not how Herb Sendak does it. It's going to be a very, very interesting contrast of styles in terms of what Gonzaga is able to do with their shooting. I just don't think they have the same liability to struggle the way Santa Clara did. I think that they go and this is as much of a coin flip as you're going to get. Gonzaga is underrated for us over at Shot Quality. St. Mary's is overrated for us over at Shot Quality. I don't know if it's going to garner the full unit play from me, but I know it'll be on my sheet. I don't think you get many better opportunities to buy in on Mark Few for a price like this. They're going to give it their all. They're going to try to get this win. They need it to even potentially be the 1 seed. And yeah, they're going to get the auto bid. It's not really much of a concern, but this is pride for them. They want to win. They want to win the West Coast. So I expect this to be, I would consider some alternates. Honestly, maybe even more so than laying the -110, because of how I see the distribution of results being, in the fact that a close game probably goes to St. Mary's. But the larger likelihood to me is that it's a clear multi-possession win for Gonzaga, and the truth is that's just not how it's going to be priced. So if they win, it's going to have some seriousness to it, fouls and all that. You're not going to win I don't think you win by 1 at home. It's an interesting claim. We'll see how it goes. I'll definitely take the spread that's offered, but interesting alternate angle when you think that the win would be sizable for a close game. If you have the shape of the distribution off, you can definitely make money if you're right. So,
couple quick things for me on this one before we wrap it up.
Sure.
Shot Quality really likes the last 2 Gonzaga results, so they don't negate any of the 20-plus point wins or 30-plus point wins for that matter against Oregon State in a big-time revenge spot earlier in the week. I will say the one area spot I think favors Gonzaga, but St. Mary's and that Randy Bennett patented ball screen offense with Saxon, I think this is going to be a big night for Saxon. If you like props, I'm going to stay away from the side and the total here, but Gonzaga's ball screen offense, they rank in the 31st percentile in terms of pick and roll man. So Saxon could have his way against a pretty, this is one of your weaker Gonzaga front lines. Ike, even though he has size, not necessarily the most physical big like we saw in non-conference, especially against UCLA and UConn.
It's going to be a good game.
Absolutely.
One of the best. It is a Saturday full of bangers. It's going to be awesome.
Justin, any last takes before we get out of here?
No, enjoy it. This is one of those absolutely insane. Florida Tennessee is going to be a great one. I have a lean there towards the over, so that'll be fun. I think we get the opposite of what we saw, which is both teams going at it. Little bit of a weakened Tennessee side compared to when they met last, and we saw what happened
Dude,
there.
they cannot shoot. They missed. One last quick note, which is definitely favors to your regression point. Due for regression, I'll say the D word here for Tennessee that we don't like to share on the podcast. But it is wild. So Tennessee against Kentucky, 13 for 41 on uncontested shots, 8 for 33 on uncontested threes, 7 for 16 on layups.
It's got Give me the over. 140 points are coming down. Come on. Florida's going to just push and shoot, and Lanier is going to play and have a game. It's going to be fun. It's going to be in-your-face basketball. Clayton, Lanier, I think probably can both go for 25. So let's have a great day. Hopefully cash a bunch of these bets. Eli, as always, thank you for having me on the show, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Love doing the show with you. Beat the Closing Number presented by TheLines.com. Justin Perri of Shot Quality. Follow him on X at JustinPerri8. I'm on X at Eli Hershkovich. Be sure to check out all of our work at TheLines.com and Best Bets in our Discord channel. Link is over at TheLines.com in the top right-hand corner. For Justin and for myself, Eli Hershkovich, so long, everybody, and good luck with your Saturday, February 1st college basketball bets.